What happens when grief begins before the death and the goodbye itself? When we're already grieving someone who is, in this moment in time, still very much alive. In today's episode of Death on the Daily, I wanted to talk about anticipatory grief because it's something that's really alive in me at the moment. It's something that I'm currently experiencing and journeying with as I and my family accompany my nan in what I believe will probably be her final few months. An anticipatory grief is when you have feelings of grief, when you experience grief whilst someone is still alive. And much like the whole topic of grief, within anticipatory grief, there are many different shades. There are a whole rainbow of what this grief experience could be. So I share this with the invitation to, if you are feeling anticipatory grief or any type of grief, meet yourself where you are, because the more presence and connection that you bring to yourself, the more that you can really understand, what does this grief mean for me? But in this space of anticipatory grief, obviously there are the feelings of grief, that deep sadness, all of the emotions that come up, as perhaps like with my nan, we're journeying with someone where we know that this will be their final chapter. It could also be a bit like in my journey with my nan, where there are these milestones of endings and letting go. For example, a big one with my nan was realizing that moment where actually I couldn't have a conversation with her where she would respond with a full sentence. That was a really, really big feeling of loss that it brought up in me, and an acknowledgement and an understanding of that which will come. The fact that this was a very long pathway of her ultimately dying as she's journeying with her dementia. But also within anticipatory grief, there could be feelings around all of the other secondary losses that come with the loss of that person. So secondary losses are the impacts on our life that happen as a result of the primary loss, the death of that person. So secondary losses might be, how will I cope in life without this person? For example, with my nan, she is such a stable presence in my life. So what I'm really connecting into in my journey with my anticipatory grief is the fact that it's not just a closing of the chapter that's coming with her and with her beautiful energy and her presence in my life in her physical form, but it's also everything else that she and also my granddad, who died in 2022, that they have brought me in my lifetime. There's a sense of belief, of really knowing that I can go to wherever I want to in my life that was instilled through them, and knowing that while obviously there's a continued bond with my connection to them and that belief that they instilled in me, there's not going to be that physical presence of my nan and obviously my granddad, who's already gone, cheering me on and telling me, yeah, we knew you could do this, and inspiring me to take that next leap. So there are many and any different ways that anticipatory grief can show up for us in our life. And really the key to this is just bringing that presence and awareness. Whatever is coming up within you is totally valid, is totally justified. And actually it really does deserve that airtime. It deserves to be spoken through. But also I wanted to shine a spotlight on the other ways that anticipatory grief can show up for us in life. If you've been tuning into Death on the Daily, you'll know that this is a space where we explore any and all endings and transitions and deaths in our life, obviously including the death of people in our world and how we journey forwards with our grief, but also in relationships ending, in careers ending, in big transitional moments in life. And I want to make a really important acknowledgement that anticipatory grief can show up in any of these. If I take myself back to, for example, a former relationship in my 20s, I can now connect into the fact that with me knowing that it was coming to an end, and with me knowing that at some point I was going to have a very difficult conversation, that there was anticipatory grief that was coming up and that probably needed some airtime to be expressed, where I could acknowledge how I'm really, really feeling as I'm facing into that imminent ending. One of the hardest things about anticipatory grief is just the fact that, much like grief awareness and education in our society is still not where it needs to be, there is even less recognition of that anticipatory grief. And when we think about all of the places that we move through, be it work, in our friendship circles, in our family, when this needs to be expressed, it's really important that we have that safety to be able to say how we're really feeling. without anyone sharing any platitudes that are just really, really unhelpful, or anything that's telling us, be grateful that you've got more time with this person. Because yes, if I connect into my journey, I am very grateful every second that I get with my nan. Every visit to her care home to me now feels like just such a bonus. And I am hell-bent on being super present, connecting into the joy, and just soaking up every little aspect of her, of just taking in her face, of feeling the warmth of her hands as we hold hands, and giving her heaps of hugs and all of that. And I feel such deep gratitude for that. But that's not the whole of the picture, because there's also a deep sadness about the fact that very soon she will no longer be here. And it's totally okay for both of those to coexist. And actually, when we can be present with our grief, we can understand that there is a whole picture. And within that, there is so much love, joy, and meaning alongside that which feels really upsetting to us. And that is totally okay. So I now wanted to share just some simple ways that we can hold anticipatory grief, particularly in a world where it is so unacknowledged. First up, we've got name it. It can be so powerful to simply say, I know I'm grieving. I acknowledge that there's anticipatory grief here. Our grief is crying out literally for acknowledgement. When we can name it, and perhaps when we can go a little bit deeper into it, and very gently and with compassion, as and when we're able to explore, what is it? What's coming up? What in these endings and transitions, and as we face into death, what is surfacing within me? What am I sad to be letting go of? How am I feeling about that? This is a space where we can just be really gentle and really curious with ourselves. So I'd say find your own outlet to let this out, be it journaling, be it leaving yourself little voice notes, be it grabbing notes on your phone, be it talking to someone who you know that you can have this conversation heart to heart with. This is a space for exploration, because the more that we acknowledge that which is true within us, the more that we can see, actually, I can walk my path forwards. I can walk through this grief. I can hold hands with it. And when I do, it can bring so much meaning and purpose into my life. And I also wanted to acknowledge that for some of us, it can be really challenging to name our grief. So firstly, just to put my hand on my heart and just share my love and compassion if that's you. If you find it difficult to find those words, to find that acknowledgement. And obviously reach out in your network, those who are in your orbit who you can have these conversations with. As well as, I'd say, don't forget there is also professional support out there who can really support you in that path. Be it a therapist, be it a counselor, be it a grief coach like myself, someone who's trained in holding space and being able to help you to speak it out and to navigate that forwards path. And second up, we've got letting go of perfection. This is a really important one because I personally have found anticipatory grief to be really ungrounding. It's something actually that I was actually talking about this in a coaching session recently with my coach, where because I feel like I'm floating towards an endpoint where there is no specific set endpoint, I found that I put a lot of pressure on myself to show up for my nan, to show up for myself, to be perfect in making every moment count, to be perfect in, and I say quote unquote perfect because there is no perfection in this world, let's be real, but to be perfect in how I show up in presence. But I've come to realize that in all grief, but also specifically anticipatory grief, we need to have heaps and heaps of grace and compassion. Because actually, in these moments, we don't need to be consciously always thinking, how can I make every single second of this moment count? Just us showing up, just as us being able to be as present as we possibly can be, that is enough. You are enough. It will feel messy at times. It's felt messy many, many times, including even just yesterday as I prepared to go see my nan this Friday. But what this is just about is just showing up for ourselves and showing up for those who we love. It's as simple as that. And equally in those moments where we retreat, where we say, actually, I can't show up this week, I need to rest, or we just disappear. It's being able to acknowledge that with kindness and compassion and see that we are all human. We are all on this messy, imperfect journey. And actually, that imperfection is so welcomed. So throughout all of this, it's just about remembering that connection to our heart, remembering that we are enough and we are doing the very best that we can in this messy space of navigating our path forwards with anticipatory grief. So third up, we've got letting yourself say goodbye. This is something that I found really helpful as I've journeyed with my nan and also with my granddad before her. It was being able to face into the fact that at the end of this path, at the end of all of our paths, there is death and endings. We can't escape that as humans or any living being on this planet. But when we know that this is a closing chapter, when there's anticipatory grief that's rooted in, for example, journeying with someone where maybe there's a terminal illness, where maybe, like with my nan, they're journeying with something that's relatively long term. She's had dementia for, well over 10 years. I'm not even sure how long at this point, but we knew the path that we were on. And actually, when I was able to face into that and able to start saying goodbye in my own way, in a way that felt appropriate for our relationship and as well to meet my nan where she is at any one time, I found that deeply healing. It's helped me to come to terms with her inevitable death and to be able to process it through as I sit in company with her, as well as through my own journaling practice when I leave her and when I come back home. So what this has looked like for me is a little practice of reminding myself every single time that I see her. And actually, I think this is a really powerful practice that, now I'm thinking about it, I would love to do when I see any member of my family, because truly the lessons of impermanence are none of us know when we are going to meet our ending. But what I've been really conscious with her and also with my granddad in his final year was every time I see them, to go up and to say everything as if it was my final time with them. Because who knows when that's going to be. And what's really beautiful is within that, there have been all of the I love yous. There's been me giving my nan and my granddad all of my gratitude for the belief that they instilled in me, for all of the gifts, for all of the beautiful memories, going back through the memory box with my nan. But then outside of my visits to her, that's also been in a journaling practice where sometimes I've written letters to her of goodbye, of sharing things that are on my heart that I think actually, for me with her dementia, I'm very sensitive around the fact that we can't have a two-way conversation. So she can't tell me when she's uncomfortable with certain things that I'm saying. So if I want to go deeper, I go deeper through a letter that I write to her that I believe in some way my soul is speaking to her soul, and her soul is deeply listening in those moments. So there's really powerful different ways, and you can get really creative in it, of what rituals, what journaling, what conversations can help you to start to say those goodbyes that are needed. As well as obviously in our paths where there is that degeneration, for example, my nan not being able to speak anymore, not being able to move most of her body, actually being able to also acknowledge them as endings, and for me to be really conscious of that and the goodbye that happens in each of those milestones as we journey together. And finally, before we close out this episode, I just wanted to make a really important acknowledgement that in all of this work, it's so important that we move forwards with that grace and compassion and honoring of ourselves. When we connect within, we can see, and I'm feeling at the moment, some days my anticipatory grief I sort of connect into it. It's up on my collarbone. I can just feel it here. It's present in my chest. There's a sadness. There's also a deep meaning. There's a lot that's coming through. Sometimes in anticipatory grief, I felt anxiety. I felt other stuff that bubbles through. But if we can always flow forwards with a commitment to honor ourselves, to practice and do our very best, because that is enough, to be present with ourselves. And within that, as I close out this episode, I just wanted to close out with a note to myself and a note to you to say that within this practice of presence, of finding that deepening into our connection to our grief and the understanding that it brings, it's really important to honor our nervous system. It's really important to be taking action. If it's that actually I'm feeling my anticipatory grief today and this is telling me I need to slow down, then do it. If it's telling you I need to do some breath work, I need to do my favorite yoga class, I need to step outside and go in nature for a walk, because that, my feet on the earth, is how I feel my most grounded. Go and do it. Flow with your body's wisdom, because your body knows you best. And so my note to self is really, really simple for today's episode to close out our conversation about anticipatory grief. And it's this: as I journey with my anticipatory grief, I will honor myself always. Really, really simple. Show yourself the kindness that if one of your close friends was telling you how they're feeling, that you would be urging them to show themselves. So that completes this episode of Death on the Daily. This has felt like a really cathartic one for me because it's something that I'm really journeying with. As I'm recording this, I'm due to go see my nan in 2 days. I try and see her every other week. And I truly, truly value these conversations because actually this is how, when we speak about death and when we speak about our grief, we can create space within us. Through that exploration, it can, whatever's coming up for you, whatever those shifts might be, it can create awareness. It can create what I'm feeling right now is a lightness. It can help to reconnect us in if we've disconnected perhaps from that sense of joy and that sense of love and that sense of meaning that is also available for us today. Or it can also simply just honor how we're really feeling and allow those emotions and those tears to be expressed. So I'm so grateful to you. And if you're journeying with anticipatory grief or any form of grief, I just want to, from my heart to yours, send all of my love to you. I'm here through Death on the Daily. We're journeying together in this lifelong path of grief. My tattoo of grief, it is lifelong. I have accepted that. But with you and with all of our beautiful connections, I know that we can journey through with lots of meaning and lots of beauty that will flow through from this place. So if this episode resonated with you, I would love it if you could hit subscribe and maybe share this episode as well with someone in your orbit who is journeying with anticipatory grief. And wherever you are in your journey, from my heart to yours, know that I'm sending you lots and lots of love. All of my gratitude to you for joining me for another Dead Conversation. Death on the Daily is edited by David Strutt. The music is Set Free by Katie Gray. And I am Tanya Wilkinson. And if you enjoyed this episode, I would be over the moon if you can rate, review, and subscribe. It really, really helps me to get the word out there. And if you want to say hi or to hear more about my work as a coach and death doula, including how I support my clients to navigate their death on the daily, then all of the ways that you can connect with me are in the show notes. I'll be back soon with some more Dead Conversations. And in the meantime, take good care of yourself and others.
There's a cold fire, there's a crossfire, and there's something